The rain had been falling for hours, soft at first, gentle enough to ignore. But by evening, the entire city had disappeared beneath silver streets, glowing reflections, and quiet moving shadows. Emma stood beneath the small roof of a closed bookstore, watching the rain pour endlessly onto the pavement. The night air smelled of rain, cold stone, and distant coffee shops still glowing softly in the dark. Most people hurried home quickly, heads lowered, umbrellas moving fast beneath the streetlights, but Emma stayed still, listening. There was something peaceful about rain at night, something that slowed the world down, something that made memories feel closer. A bus passed slowly nearby, sending water softly across the street. Emma wrapped her coat tighter around herself and sighed quietly. It had been a long week, too much noise, too many thoughts, too little silence. Sometimes people don't realize how tired they are until the world finally becomes quiet. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound of rain fill the silence around her, and then she heard a voice. "Still afraid of thunderstorms?" Emma opened her eyes immediately. Her heart stopped for a second, because the voice felt familiar, not vaguely familiar, deeply familiar. She turned slowly toward the street. A man stood a few feet away beneath the rain, holding a dark umbrella. The streetlight above him glowed softly through the falling water. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The cars, the rain, the city. All of it faded quietly into the background, because somehow she knew that voice. Daniel. The name appeared in her mind instantly before she even fully recognized his face. He looked older now, softer somehow, but his eyes were exactly the same. Calm, warm, quiet. Emma stared at him silently, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she suddenly remembered too many things at once. Summer evenings, late-night conversations, coffee cups left unfinished, promises whispered softly into the dark, and one goodbye neither of them had truly expected. Daniel smiled gently. "You still do that," he said quietly. Emma blinked slightly. "Do what?" "Disappear into your thoughts." She laughed softly before she could stop herself, a small laugh, surprised, almost forgotten. The rain continued around them, steady, endless, as if the city itself had slowed down just to let this moment happen. "I can't believe it's really you," Emma whispered. Daniel stepped a little closer beneath the umbrella. "Honestly, neither can I." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, years of distance suddenly feeling strangely small. "Are you heading somewhere?" Daniel asked gently. Emma glanced toward the empty street. "Not really." Daniel looked toward the café across the road. Warm lights glowed through fogged windows. "Then come have coffee with me." The invitation felt simple, natural, as if no time had passed at all. Emma hesitated only for a second, then nodded softly. Together, they crossed the rain-covered street. The sound of water followed them quietly beneath the city lights. Inside the cafe, warm air wrapped around them immediately. Soft music played somewhere in the background. Candles flickered gently near the windows, and outside, rain continued moving slowly through the night. Emma removed her coat slowly, still trying to understand how this moment was real. Daniel sat across from her quietly, just like years ago, and somehow, that familiar feeling returned immediately. Comfort, not excitement, not nervousness, something calmer, deeper, the feeling of returning somewhere your heart remembers. "You look different," Daniel said softly. Emma smiled faintly. "So do you." Daniel laughed quietly. "I guess time does that." For a moment, silence settled gently between them again. But unlike most silences, this one didn't feel awkward. It felt safe. The waitress brought their coffee. Steam curled softly into the warm cafe air. Rain tapped quietly against the windows beside them. And then Daniel asked softly, "How long has it been?" Emma looked down at her cup for a second. 5 years. Saying it aloud felt strange. Too large, too impossible. 5 years of separate lives, separate mornings, separate nights. And yet somehow, one familiar voice in the rain had brought everything back. Daniel looked toward the window quietly. "I used to think about calling you." Emma looked up slowly. "Why didn't you?" He smiled sadly. "I thought maybe you were happier without me." The rain outside softened slightly now. The city lights shimmered gently through the glass. And somewhere deep inside her, Emma realized something. Some feelings don't disappear. They simply wait quietly inside us. The cafe felt warmer now. Or maybe it was simply the feeling of sitting across from someone your heart had never truly forgotten. Rain continued tapping softly against the windows beside them. Outside, the city moved quietly through the night. Cars passed slowly through silver streets. Streetlights reflected gently on the wet pavement. And inside the cafe, everything felt calm, still, safe. Emma wrapped both hands around the warm coffee cup. The heat felt comforting, real, grounding. For a while, neither of them spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because some moments need silence first. Daniel looked toward the rain quietly. "I still remember the last night we talked," he said softly. Emma lowered her eyes slightly. "So do I." The memory returned instantly. A train station, cold evening air. A goodbye neither of them knew how to handle. Promises left unfinished, feelings left unsaid. "I thought you hated me after that," Daniel admitted quietly. Emma looked up immediately. "Hated you?" She shook her head softly. "No, never." Daniel smiled faintly, almost relieved. "I wanted to call you so many times," Emma whispered. "Why didn't you?" Emma looked down at the coffee again. "Because I was afraid." Daniel nodded slowly. "As strange as it sounds, so was I." The rain softened outside. Now it sounded more distant, more peaceful, like the storm itself was slowly becoming quiet. Emma looked at Daniel carefully. There was something gentler about him now, less restless, less uncertain. Time had changed him, but somehow it had also made him easier to understand. "What happened after you left?" she asked softly. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair. "A lot of ordinary things," he said quietly. "Work, different cities, different apartments, busy mornings, long nights." He smiled faintly. But somehow, everything always felt temporary. Emma understood exactly what he meant. Because some people leave a space behind them that nothing else fully fills. "And you?" Daniel asked. Emma looked toward the rain-streaked windows. "I tried to move on." She smiled softly. "I even convinced myself I had." Daniel looked at her gently. "But," Emma laughed quietly, "but then I heard your voice in the rain." For the first time that evening, Daniel laughed too. A quiet, warm laugh that instantly felt familiar again. Outside, the rain finally began slowing down. Small drops slid slowly down the glass, catching reflections of the golden cafe lights. "I used to walk through rain, hoping I'd see you again," Daniel admitted quietly. Emma blinked slightly. "Really?" He nodded. "Especially on nights like this." Something inside her heart moved softly, not painfully, not suddenly, just gently, like a memory finally returning home. Hours passed quietly around them. The cafe slowly emptied. The music grew softer. The city became calmer. And somehow, neither of them noticed time moving at all. Eventually, Daniel looked at the clock near the counter. "It's late," he said softly. Emma smiled faintly. "I know." But neither of them stood up, because sometimes the hardest thing is leaving a moment that feels important. Finally, they stepped outside together. The rain had almost stopped completely now. Only small drops remained, falling quietly from rooftops above. The city looked beautiful after rain. Streetlights shimmered softly. The air smelled fresh and clean. Everything felt quieter than before. Emma and Daniel walked slowly beside each other without speaking much. And somehow, the silence felt just as meaningful as the conversation. They reached the small bridge crossing the river near the cafe. Water below reflected the city lights like moving gold. Daniel stopped walking. Emma turned toward him slowly. "I don't want another 5 years to pass," he said quietly. The words were simple, honest, real. Emma looked at him for a long moment. The soft wind moved gently around them. And somewhere nearby, rainwater still dripped quietly from the rooftops. Then she smiled softly. "Then don't disappear again." Daniel smiled too, a real smile this time, warm, certain, and standing there together beneath the quiet city lights, Emma realized something important. Sometimes life doesn't bring people back to repeat the past. Sometimes it gives them another chance to continue the story the right way. The river moved quietly beneath the bridge. The clouds slowly opened above the city, and between them a few stars finally appeared. Daniel looked up briefly. "Looks like the storm is ending." Emma smiled softly. Maybe it was waiting for this. Together they continued walking slowly through the quiet night. No rushing, no fear, only the calm feeling of finding something again that neither of them had truly lost.